example, is a big issue for League of Legends. You were super good at home in a specific control environment. The day you step on a stage, you choke. So those 5 points, I believe, are challenges when it comes to performance. They need to be identified, they need to be understood, and it's really hard for young players. So, and that's why I'm tossing the ball to my colleagues. We need sports psychologists with an understanding of those and method, because the answers, we have them. We had to study them for other sports.
I agree, Romain. I would like to, I would like to continue on that or follow up on that.
Yes,
but
please.
I would like to take a broader perspective because, and with my experience from League of Legends and from CS:GO and also from FIFA, and I think on the big scene we've seen an increase in the negative stories with ref to the mental issues. And when talking about finding a solution to this, I think it's very important that we separate symptoms from causes. And from my point of view, I mean, there are three major causes that leaves us with these issues about the mental health. And the first cause is what I call time and the development of the sport and the character of the sport. And I think everybody can agree that, I mean, the esport is developing in a very, very fast speed. And it's like building a house while we're living in it. And everybody around inside the sport and outside the sport want to have a share of this. So we'll see more and more tournaments and we'll see larger prize money. And it's very difficult for the athletes, but also for the organizations to set boundaries and acknowledge that the limit is reached with reference to what can the athletes deliver. And then again, for the well-being of the athletes. That's the one thing. The other thing is that the sport is very transparent. I mean, every performance is measured and it's available for everybody. And that increases the pressure to perform at the top level continuously. And it is very demanding for the players on the long run. Then also with regard to the time and development, I mean, the athletes we are seeing at the moment performing at this very high level, I mean, they have not had any role models. They are first movers in this, and they haven't had any role models backing off. They haven't seen anybody backing off due to health issues. So that's also a thing. Mm. And then the last thing with ref to the character of the sport is that, I mean, those guys coming up now, they have played the whole life or their entire youth, because they can make a living of this, and I think it's we as organizations around and psychologists around the players has to help them answer the question. I mean, who am I when I'm not a gamer or a sport athlete? Because if they can't see that, it's very difficult to let go and just stay in the hamster wheel. So that was time and the character of the sport. The second major cause is a culture. And because it is a new culture, as I said, we are building a house while we're living in it. So there's no previous culture as a reference point. So that's something we're creating ourselves. And I, from my perspective, with 3 years in the sport, is that we have a culture where athletes, until now, athletes and organizations, they tend to prioritize everything. I mean, we're running for everything. And now with all the opportunities, it's very important to prioritize. Otherwise, you'll risk a burnout. A third thing that I think is a cause with respect to the culture is that this, not tradition, but this culture that if you're not performing, you're in a danger of being benched. And that leaves the athlete with the opinion that I have to perform all the time, and I can't show vulnerability or I can't express a need for a break because then I'll be benched, and the next step is I'm off. Then about the culture, and I think that's a major point we have to address, is that the setup and the tournaments, they are arranged that you're punished if you make a change in the lineup during a tournament, because then you're losing points, at least in some of the tournaments. And that is very different to traditional sports, because you'll never see the same start 11 or the start lineup playing a whole season. So there's something we can learn there. And then the last thing with regards to the culture is that I mean, the athletes and the organizations has to see themselves as elite athletes. And by that I mean, they're their own weapon platform. And they have to be serious about this. And I see a starting movement towards this, but we have the organizations, they need to help them to expand on it. Then the last thing, the third thing is a person and organization, because athletes are individuals and they have individuals' preconditions in order to cope with stress and burnout. But we need, the organizations need to take responsibility here and to help the athletes being better at that. And I think the way we're going to do that is to create a performance team around the players with different competences to help them.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things to cope with, but I think we need to address the causes and not just the symptoms. So that was thanks.
Yeah. If I can continue, I think you guys have summarized very well, like the organizational structure of esports, the past and the now, and just the identification of symptoms and the issues that we have with the game itself. For example, changing the game every 2 weeks. This is another big issue. Players have to adapt to it. So, although I would like to clarify something that is more as well, a little bit looking into a wider perspective. So, for example, we have professional athletes, right? Professional esports players, which is the elite, is the highest level of performance. But then we have as well these amateur players from regional leagues, academy teams who are trying to make it to the top. And then we have in a third point, like for example, streamers or entertainers who as well are part of this big system of the issues of video games or esports as a whole. So I think for me it's very important that we learn how to contextualize and individualize what is happening in each of these different areas. Because as like Fabien started the conversation, there was this news about the streamer who commits suicide, unfortunately. So we need to identify what are the issues in these different contexts. Although mental health is something that it needs to be prevented and not just needs to be intervened, right? So I completely agree that we need to try to understand better what is happening. So if we go to the top elite level where Lars and I are working with, so yes, that is the culture about winning at all cost. It is a culture that you need to win, you need to compete, and it doesn't matter how. So I see a big issue in terms of the developmental paths of these pro players, which is basically limited at the moment. We don't have any space for the players of 18, 17 years old, 20 years old. We didn't give them the space for them to develop basic life skills. And this is something that we're learning, or we know it is included in programs in traditional sports. So there are programs of life skills. You develop some life skills, and then these life skills can be transferred to your daily life. And I think Lars commented the importance of seeing the person behind the player, and this needs to be included in all the organizations. I think it goes all around the awareness, and there are, I mean, of course, we're trying to understand as well in sports how to approach this, right? Like it is not that traditional sports are already very ahead of esports in terms of how they are identifying mental health. They are as well just trying to implementing practices and being more aware of it. And we have seen recently lots of testimonials from professional players in NFL and NBA and different sports, the big athletes, just being aware that this is happening. So it is very interesting to me that in esports or video games, like video game culture, we are already looking into this perspective, because as you can see, sports have been long time ago in front of us, right? Like esports or professional esports has been only, let's say, 10 years or so, and we're already starting to implement a multidisciplinary group of performers or professionals working with top athletes. So I think this is one of these big steps of looking for sports psychologists, looking for clinicians, looking for fitness trainers. So a very integral approach. So this is something that is happening right now, and I'm very kind of pushing towards this direction. But I think organizations could be doing even better or having a better approach, since we were talking about these three different scenarios: top level athletes, academy players, and streamers. So they are always part of an organization, usually. So I think the organizations should be try to implement a culture that is promoting mental health, right? It is not like kind of mental health is only when someone has an issue. Mental health means working towards a healthy culture, working towards values, working towards integrity, and development of skills, or just relationships. So we need to try to implement this and encourage the awareness of mental health. So I think, I'm not sure, but I have seen as well, like kind of, or I think that as well, like game developers, they have a big part on this. So I think they should be as well trying to welcome people, professionals, to try to, I don't know, create programs for these individual players who are in their houses and they are trying to be part of a team. But as well, they're having some mental issues because they don't have anyone supporting them next to them. So I think like game developers could be as well a big part in trying to address mental health issues in video games and esports as a whole.
Thank you, Ismael. I mean, we have a lot of gamers watching us today, so I'm sure they will like the advice. But I agree with you. I think this is the entire ecosystem and all the different stakeholders that have to join forces in some way to apprehend this all together. And I think the solution can really come from everybody. But no, thank you. Lars, Romain, would you like to add anything to this?
I wanted to react on something Lars said, which I really like, about how players need to define who they are, which is something you can really easily forget just because you're grinding week after week the tournament. And I thought, and I discovered that taking some break by going back home can be life-changing for the player because they forget how cool their job is. It's probably one of the most beautiful jobs in the world to be a pro player. You pay to play video game, but you're forgetting it because you're lost in the training and everything. So when you have to go back home with your friends and your family and you have to redefine yourself because they ask you, oh, how was it? And you have to describe your life and you see everyone looking at you with like star in their eyes, like, oh my God. And you realize maybe your friends are talking about you everywhere because your life is so exotic and you're getting all these positive recognition, which you couldn't get at home because maybe you had a bad beginning of the split and you're 0-10. You just lost your last 10 games. You're really sad. You're going back home and people are going to ask you, how is it going? I suck. I'm losing all the time, but they don't care. Like maybe they're not watching all the game. For them, you're special. You're a pro gamer. And I think plugging them back into real life before taking them back in a training environment can be really, really beneficial. I'm really happy the LEC, so the European tournament for LoL had a 1 week off. Like a few weeks ago, and I saw a lot of pros and coach on Twitter being really happy about it, and I hope we can keep the same rhythm because I really believe it helps. It helps a lot, and that's same as what Ismael was saying. Like they need to rest, and yeah, in traditional sport it's definitely not the same. So.
But I think, Romain, it's now I'm also working in traditional sports, of course. But and whenever we are talking about athletes on the elite level, I mean, where there's so much passion. They're driven by the dream in order to perform and obtain what they're dreaming of. It is very, even there, it's very important that the organizations, but again, they have another culture, an older culture, that the organizations help the athletes trying to define who are they when they are not the elite athlete. Because at a certain point, the career stops. And I hope that we can, by joint forces, I mean, create a culture where it'll be possible to compete in the esports, even when you're 35 or 40 years and have a family and things like, why not? But I mean, we really got to work on it with all forces. And yeah, both the organizers and the developers and the psychologists and the organization around the athletes. I think it's a very interesting job we have in front of us.
Yeah, sorry, I jump in. I think I mean, there are many obstacles, but I agree with Romain. Like this week that we have between during the split, it was fantastic, right? But we still need to educate our players to understand what to do, right? Because you can tell a 17, 18, 19-year-old player to not play the game during this week and just go visit family, go travel somewhere. It is super hard because they never they don't understand why, right? There is lots of resistance already from that moment. So that's why, like, the organization, it has to come from the top to try to implement this new way of seeing a professional esports career for them to kind of go along what we think is beneficial for them.
That's why you guys are here. Like org 5 years ago, I mean, orgs were struggling so much with how are we going to pay our players that they had no time to dedicate to mental health and stuff. I remember a player conference we did like in January. That was like 4 years ago, and we had Mila. Sports psychologist, used to work for Astralis, and she started the discussion. All the players were in the room, and she had this amazing moment where she was looking at everyone. So guys, could you give me a ratio of the amount of mental training versus the amount of physical training you believe you need to be performing? And all the players were like, it's 80% mental, like it's 90% mental and stuff. And she was doing, okay, now give me the ratio of how much you're training your mental, how much you're training your physical skill. The silence in the room was beautiful. Yes, she's so right. And because I believe for so long we had no clue. We didn't even thought about it. I'm good at video game because I keep training. So.
And there is something as well we haven't addressed yet, but it's as well the mental health of coaches and managers and everyone involved in the organization. Because I totally believe that everyone in an organization, everyone that is in the same building has an influence into the performance of players and into the other businesses that are happening in the organization. So as well, we need to look at it into a bigger picture. And it's totally true. Sometimes we know that there is something important we need to do, but knowing it and doing it it's another thing.
I agree as well, but I think we got to recognize we've got different roles. I see the coaches and the players. They are more or less along the same line, but the organization around the sport director or whatever it is, I mean, there's also an issue there. I totally agree with you, but they got different roles, and I think that for the sport director and the organization at that level, it's about setting the best condition for the players and with the mental health in mentioning. But I think but in overall, I think one of the major problems is that at each level, player, coach, sport director, or whatever, this courage it has to prioritize and say no, because we need to set boundaries in order to deal with the mental health. We need to set boundaries, and that's my point. It's very difficult at the moment. Because what do I miss if I say no? Yeah. So that's a crucial point.
Yep. That's why education is key, I think. Yeah. I mean, coming back to another thing. I mean, we've seen in other sports that the use of analytics and sports science has been very increasing, and with the idea to augment performance. Is that something you feel that in esports this is the case already? Or do you feel that the esports ecosystem is pretty late and behind when it comes to this?
Well, if I should start from my point of view, it's at some points in some areas the esport is far ahead or in the front, and that goes for, I mean, the use of data in order to enhance performance, both the technical and the tactical. It's they're in front. I mean, with the soccer, they are starting right now, or they are in the beginning of using data as performance enhancement. Where I think we lag behind is both with the teams, but also with the players, a profound understanding of what it takes to be an elite athlete when we're talking at this level. What does it take, not only from the tactical side, but also from the mental side, the physical side, and the social side, in order to be the best of yourself. And as we use it with Astralis and in Origen, I mean, you're your own weapon platform. You gotta be 100. Where can we hit 1% here, 1% there, 1% there, in order to improve time? And it's a whole way around. I think that's where we are new sport.
Okay.
I feel that so esports is very ahead in the area of I think esports is ahead in having the environment or the place, the platform to optimize performance. So in traditional sports, it's very hard to, for example, measure psychophysiological or implementing physiological measures, which can improve performance, right? It could be a measure that could tell us something about the performance of players. So it is a platform. It is very easy. It could be very easy use if you compare it with traditional sports. We are very ahead, I would say, like kind of what Lars was saying in terms of identifying data from the game itself. So yes, there is lots of data coming to you just because the software, the game itself, gives you the feedback of the data. Although I think that we are not kind of at that point that we understand what to do with this data. I think we have lots of data, we have lots of knowledge coming from the game itself, from other sources, but then at the same time, we haven't really get to that point that, or understanding how to develop, for example, training models. I think that's something that we are very behind from in comparison to traditional sports. And it is like, I mean, of course, it depends on organizations and it depends on, I think like this year is a little bit different, but what I'm trying to say is like, we don't have very established training models or different kind of working loads that players could use. So we have 4 days of training, and most of teams, what they do is just full training, like kind of the highest kind of training capacity, the 4 days, and then Friday and Saturday play the game. So is that actually effective practice? If we compare it to traditional sports, maybe not, right? So we need to have specific plans. But then at the same time, research hasn't got to that level to maybe understand what is optimal, what is not optimal. Even though we have a good platform to work on and to try to develop this. And I think everything is based on the direction of we need to educate the coaching staff, we need to educate managers as well, and then as well ourselves. Like for me, it was very important to understand what environment I was getting into to try to adapt, because this is one of the other issues, and is that sometimes we try to transfer everything from sports to esports, and sometimes that's not the right idea to do, because we have completely different contexts in front of us. So yeah, I think we are very, I think we have lots of potential in the industry, but we still need to try to understand better from a scientific point of view.
Maybe we also have too much data at the moment, exactly as you were saying. We don't really know what to do with it, and I think something we used to overlook for sure was the mental aspects of it. Is why, once again, I'm going back to what Lars was saying with who am I as a player, is why do you play? Who do you want to make you proud? Who do you want to make proud? And maybe the big part of the job is going to be November or December before the season even starts. Is it what are you ready to sacrifice? Not in January and February when you are still in honeymoon phase and everyone is happy. I'm talking like April. I'm talking like August when things are, the stakes are high, and all the player, if you ask them, the answer is always going to be the same. I want to be the best player. All right, what are you doing to be the best player? Well, I train a lot. What does that mean? How do you do it? And you obviously failed last year because you did not qualify and you did not win. So what are you going to change? And I'm not going to ask you to change everything, because you are a successful guy. Like, you ended up maybe top 10 is better than a lot of people. So maybe you just need to change 10, 15, 20%. And what is it going to be? Is it going to be your sleep schedule? Is it going to be your food? Is it going to be the amount of time you pay to your teammate? Is it going to be whatever? And you list those stuff in like November, December, and you make sure in February, March and stuff, when either they're really happy because they are winning or really sad because they are losing. They remember why they're fighting, how they're fighting, and this kind of stuff. And then I think we have a lot of education to do. Maybe we had for so long a coach and manager problem because they were ex-player, and coach were just wannabe player, and analysts were just wannabe coach, and manager were just failed players. So like none had a real approach on how to train, how to focus, how to clarify my goal and objective, and the amount I'm ready to pay to become the pro. And maybe the Korean and Chinese culture were better at that, which is might be one of the reasons why they are so successful at the moment. And I believe we only have 5 guys on the Rift, and we're not changing because usually it takes so much time to get a new guy. So the amount of mental strength they need to have is insane. And I would love, exactly as you were saying, 4 days of training. Now let's just do 3 days of training and 1 day of psychology. Like let's remember why we're here, what we are ready to commit to, and how we're gonna win. So maybe it's gonna come one day. I don't think coach and players are ready right now. You tell them on Tuesday you're not going to play, we're going to talk about life. They're going to say, no, I need to train my new Nautilus build. Okay, but.
But I think you're absolutely right. But it also has to do with it's very difficult, or people it's not difficult, but people tend to think it's difficult to train the mental side because they don't know how to do it. But it's just about picking a focal area and saying, okay, now we go in, practice this, bath, and see what is the difference. Well, what is how did they achieve what we wanted to show? But it's like when it's mental, it's difficult because it's not that easy to measure. Like if you might make a kill or 2 or 3 or whatever, that's a problem. But I hope that we as psychologists can change that together with the organization and the coaches and the players, because it's not difficult.
The together is important. Yeah,
I think that's the crucial point. That's very important. It needs to as well to come, like we need to be supported by the organizations in all these decisions that we do, because at the end, players, coaches, the performance side need to buy into a culture, because this is about the culture that we're trying to implement. And this is something that we do a lot in Rogue, and it's a values-based culture. Not saying that every single player is very into it, but it just takes time to reinforce and takes time to show like kind of what is the importance of understanding what are your values as a player, as a person, and how this transfer to your different transitions and phases of your esports career and your life. So it takes time, effort, but I think that's why we're here, right?
But I think Ismael and Romain, also all the people listening out there, I don't know how it is in your countries, but when we're talking about the mental side, I mean, in Denmark, we can't hardly open a newspaper or a website that has to do with sports without reading about, there was a mental breakdown, it was also a mental issue. And it has really been, it's very, very popular or at the moment. And I think it hasn't changed, but there has been some focus on it because, I mean, there's a difference. I mean, the tactical, and the physical things, they are a precondition in order to win. But when you are competing on a high stake and the big scene where there's a lot of stake, then the mental thing is essential, because that is how you cope with the pressure to get the utmost out of the technical, the tactical, physical, and things like that. So it is, and I think it's like the sport world had just discovered that recently. And that's why there has been, and from my point of view, there has been a change in the way that we work as sports psychologists and the way we treat the challenges. I mean, that's a slight difference now from 4, 5, 6 years ago.
I think it has improved, like this aspect of what are the programs, what are we implementing at the professional level, but these are organizations who are starting to prioritize the use of professionals, and I think that's one of the issues when players from amateur teams or for lower level teams come into the top or come into professional teams, and there is a little bit of restriction or a little bit of resistance in terms of, why do I have to do this if I just want to play the game? So for us, it's very clear. And then as well, like we have the examples from Korea and China, where the culture is a little bit more like play. So why, if they are doing that, why should I prioritize 1 hour of training, of physical training, or of mental preparation or education or something like that? So of course it comes with lots of resistance, but I think it makes sense what we're doing, or what we are trying to promote to them.
Your gaming house had a really nice feeling when I visited like two weeks ago. I'm really sad I couldn't visit Origen, because you guys are too far from Berlin and the world is burning outside. That's the only one I haven't seen recently. But the atmosphere when you enter the Rogue one is actually really nice. And I strongly believe it's just because you have adults in the room. No disrespect to the young players, but you have like people with a real job around, and it helps them to understand they are at work, their brain and their hands are tools, and other people can help them to improve it, which once again 5-6 years ago the whole training was 5 players and 1 coach, and if they are successful, then they're not gonna take advices from anyone. Like how do you coach someone who just won the European Championship? Like, even you want to help them to improve, they're gonna tell you, we know exactly what we're doing. Like, what the fuck are you telling me? I just won, bro. Yeah, but let's talk about it in 2-3 years, you know, like, and I think like exactly like the team's changing, the new players coming are just gonna shut up because Rogue might end up first of the splits. That's the best I wish you. And then it means any new player entering the org in 2021 are just gonna shut up and follow whatever guidelines the team is gonna do. So I think we are in a transition period with more and more power for sports psychologists. Players as well understand. And to piggyback on Lars was saying, I believe the whole world is realizing mental health can be an issue, especially because we all just got locked down for 3 months at home, just alone with ourselves, you know. So like suddenly mental health is everywhere, and I think it's great because it helps us realize, yeah, maybe we use our brain all the time. Why we never take care of it? So this, I think you guys have a bright future. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah. I was just thinking that we're talking about, we can't do this when we're talking about the psychologists and mental health. We can't do that. We can't make the changes without the organizations and the coaches and of course the players. But I think it's, as you rightfully said, Roman, we are, and Ismael also, we're changing the culture now. We're creating a culture, and we're going from one place to another. And I think it's very important that we realize, as psychologists, or it could be psychiatrists or whatever, physiologists coming in, that we meet the athletes and the coaches where they are in order to move them forward. Not just saying, okay, you got to come here because we've got to change something. We really got to buy into how are they feeling? How do they see the thing? Can we explain the value to them? Because if we can't explain the value to them, they won't move. So that's where we have a big task. But we can succeed, of course.
I mean, they will say yes, okay, but
yeah.
I mean, we can see in the world of, in sports, you have more and more athletes defining their mission and what they stand for. And maybe that's also, something, maybe the future of gamers is becoming purpose-driven gamers, where they also know what they stand for, and actually using their platform and their, esport as a way to make a positive difference. And that can participate in some ways in their fulfillment, I believe. So as you said, I think answering the question why I'm doing this, or why I'm here is really key, and there is a lot of education, and that's why you have more and more purpose-driven teams as well, looking to build this, because it's a responsibility. Yeah, but look, guys, the insight is very, very powerful, and thank you for everything. We have lots and lots of questions, so I'd like Andrew maybe to select a couple of them, because we won't be able to cover all of them, but we're going to select a couple of them, and I will appreciate if you can answer some of these, please.
Yeah, hey everybody. Just conscious of time here, so we're not going to get to all. We have over 20, and they're all really good ones, and I'm afraid we'd end up in a hole and be here for another hour, which is maybe not a bad thing, but yeah, just to circle back around on specifically the mental health portion of this. So there's certainly a piece that we've seen a lot of kind of professional athletes, people like Kevin Love, people like Michael Phelps, that have come out and spoken about their challenges with mental health and kind of shown a brighter light on it. But it still seems to be very taboo from an athlete perspective within esports. And there's a couple questions around that. Around, is this an age thing? Is it because the game these esports athletes are typically a little bit younger, or feel less established, less confident in speaking about it, or is it a structural thing? Is it a thing where they don't feel like they have the platform? I mean, obviously, somebody like Kevin Love or Michael Phelps are kind of individuals almost bigger than their sports in a lot of cases, or kind of comparatively, esports still feels like a structure where there's people underneath it. I mean, the idea of esports is still bigger than the athletes individually. So curious about what would kind of help. How do you kind of bring that out of that taboo area and kind of empower the athletes themselves to speak about it?
I think it's about it's a little bit about everything. I mean, the culture and the time and all, as I tried to explain in the start. But I think that time will also serve a purpose here, because as I started saying, that now we got role models, now we got big players, we got elite athletes going out saying enough is enough, I need a break, and then it makes it's okay to go out, raise a hand and say, okay, I also need a break. So I think that will be helped in a certain way here. About an age thing, yeah, I think it's easier to talk about when you have fulfilled your dreams or obtained your goals or whatever. Then it's easier to stand out and be vulnerable, because you are vulnerable when you're going out and say, okay, I can't cope with this anymore, I need a break. So I think there's a lot of things in it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, we don't really know if what a specific factor is providing this maybe hesitation towards opening up about mental health issue, or if it is still a taboo or not. I mean, again, we're talking about traditional sports where it is not like 10 years ago that sports was created, or elite level of sports is just in front of us. It's lots of years, right? So, and then this is just starting to happen. Just professional athletes are just starting to give testimonials. I feel like we are right now in I would say in a beautiful moment in which people are starting to realize the importance of the self-actualization or self-development. I think people are more in this trend of, well, I need to look after myself. I need to look after my mental health. And this is transferring across disciplines. It's kind of being there in every performance domain. We are looking about how to prevent burnout in different settings, right? So I think we're in a good moment in terms of being aware and opening up. For the case of esports, it is very young. It's a very young space. We have very young players. Yes, we have very young organizations in which, for these organizations, for these spaces, what is very, very important is succeed, is just win, is just to be there. So of course, players, organizations will be a little bit hesitant towards showing that there are some issues in the inside, right? Because this will affect the sponsorships, for example. Even though I feel like recently, I don't know if you have seen the social media, for example, there are organizations who are promoting awareness of mental health. Pro players or pro coaches are opening up and giving testimonials about these issues in the scene. So I think we are in a very good path. I think just bringing awareness, testimonials, just promoting this open discussion will continue developing awareness of what we need to be, what we need to do.
Education, yeah.
Andrew, is there another question?
Yeah, just two more for y'all. So the first one, and Lars, I think you touched on this a little bit, but this idea of balancing kind of mental health with the performance aspect, and kind of, an esports organization giving the athletes and the team space to kind of have that area, but juggling that with the performance aspect. Obviously, a team is still judged by its performance and how well it does. And so there's been a couple of questions around how do you kind of create that environment? How do you facilitate that environment for a team to grow in both ways?
I think first of all, the organization I belong to, with the Origen and Astralis, we have a strong performance team around the team, with including psychologist, physiologist, dietist, and things like that, in order to to help, and also doctors, to help the athletes whenever there is an issue. But another thing that, and that is primarily on my table, that is trying to create a culture, and I think we are quite successful with Astralis on that, and also with Origen, but that's the younger team, with daring to be vulnerable, daring to put the difficult things on the table, both in the group dynamics, because there's always things in play in a team that can make the cooperation difficult, but also on an individual base. So having this vulnerability to putting things on the table, because if you don't put things on the table, you can't deal with them. So that's a precondition. When we're talking about what is the main task of a sports psychologist, that is to make the athlete present in the here and now at 100% what he or she has available. So there must be nothing, neither mental health issues or any other issues that are disturbing that. And that's very much about creating a culture where we dare to put things on the table. And that takes time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Lars. And I think the first time when I hear about Origen getting the performance team with Refresh, I was very happy about it. I could say, like, I hope that this model works. I hope that they get to show that this is important, because that's how I feel organizations need to move on. You need professionals helping you in different disciplines. Mental health doesn't only involve the mind. It doesn't only involve the body. It involves so many things: the social aspect, the nutritional aspect, the physiology. There are so many things, and there are many practitioners and professionals who can help in this direction. So that was more or less, I wanted to always to mention that I really love that model. And I think it takes time. It takes time to develop it. It takes time to implement a change, a paradigm change in an environment that it has a very strong roots into what video games is and what esports is. So I believe that when you come into a new environment like this one, you need to have a very strong idea. What is your philosophy in terms of what is your approach toward success? And then at the same time to have a kind of prioritize your well-being. How these ones go hand to hand, because before in traditional sports, there was like kind of this culture, again, this culture of win at all cost. It doesn't matter if you burn out. It doesn't matter if you have to compete injured. It doesn't matter as long as you win the medal. So that's why I think, like, when you start with a team, or for example, in my case, it was just to have a philosophy. What do I prioritize, and how I will be helping in the performance side, which of course we want to win, we want to compete, but that doesn't mean that we need to leave the kind of the person behind. Or yeah.
100%. I also believe the onboarding is really, really important. Like the first months of a new player, how is he going to feel welcome? And it goes down hand in hand with culture and stuff. Like if you join a team and you believe you suddenly are a hero because this team really needs you, which is definitely the case in League of Legends, because we only have 5 players on the board. So at the end of the day, like, they are a hero literally. And I think that's something we've been overlooking for so long, because you get the new player and then you have to win right now, right here. And it might be difficult. Like I would love to see teams taking 1 week, and I saw actually Origen doing it a lot, like doing external activities just to create memories together outside of the game and allowing you to meet your teammates, and it's going to make your efficiency in the battlefield much better because you have those boundaries from outside of the game. So.
But I think, Romain, that it's very crucial, because we often make the mistake that when we get a new man or a new member on the team, it's still the same team. No, it's not the same team. Whenever you get a new person, you have a completely different team. Then you got to renegotiate the values, the dreams, the everything. So it's a very good point. Absolutely.
Same in real world, by the way. Like everything, it's being polarized because it's a competitive environment. But same in a relationship, a family, a normal job. Like the addition of a new member is never something easy. And it can turn into something beautiful, new blood, new honeymoon phase, lot of motivation. But if you overlook it, yeah, it's gonna have consequences.
I think that's why it's very important to have an established culture, which sometimes it can be flexible, but sometimes when you have a new member, this member could adapt it, or it could be adapted to this new culture. And if you have any kind of consistent approaches that you are doing not over the weeks but over the days, it will be easier, like kind of this introduction to new players, and as well to continue developing what you believe from the beginning. That's why like kind of we have team meetings where at the beginning of the season where we define what are the values of our team, our individuals, what we're trying to achieve, and how we're going to behave according to it. So it's something that needs to be kind of remind every single day, or at least very often.
And together, the 5 players, the coach, the management, whoever is going to be part of the battle needs to be there, because if just one person is misaligned, and with a clear role definition, the only one talking about the draft is the coach. If your cook start to give drafting advices, then it's no. Everyone has a really. It's like a commando of guy. If you want to be successful when you're on the field, training needs to be the same. It needs to be reflected, and it needs to be defined. And once again, we couldn't do that. I'm so happy teams have more management now.
All right, guys. I mean, I think we're gonna end here. I mean, first I want to thank you all of you for your insights. It's been very great. Of course, it's an interesting topic. We had several hundreds of people watching. That means that this topic is very important for the esports community. And it's difficult, I know, to provide deep answers in just such a limited time. So thank you for this. We're going to pursue the conversation on our next webinar, and we already have secured one of the best gamers joining us. So it's going to be interesting. So we look forward to it. Thank you very much again. Thank you all for watching. And if you have any question, of course, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn or anywhere. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lars. Bye.
Bye, Lars. Bye, Romain. Bye, Ismael.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.